Well, our tagline is when everyone acts, violence ends. And I feel really strongly about that it's everybody's job to end violence in our communities and in people's lives. And, I'm always challenging people. What's one thing you could do? What's one thing that you could do to make a difference and help to end domestic and sexual violence? And it's up to everybody to do something.
Welcome to the Break Free podcast. I am your host, David Mancella. Today we have with us an incredible entrepreneur that has led this beautiful non-for-profit business in ways that most people don't even realize that can be done. And the reason why I said entrepreneur is because the fact that you are running a non-for-profit company doesn't mean that you are not a person that has to do whatever it takes to deliver the value that you want to deliver. That's for me the definition of an entrepreneur. It doesn't have to be a company that is making business. So Beth Hassett, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Beth, for the people, I think sometimes I don't like to say too much about my guests at the beginning because I would love to hear it from their own life experience. But tell me your full name, where do you live, and what do you do for a living?
My name is Beth Hassett, and I am the CEO of Weave, which is a nonprofit organization in Sacramento, California. And we serve survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and sex trafficking, and promote healthy relationships and safe relationships out in our community.
That's beautiful. What a way to live your life. Complete service. What you just talked about is what people never want to talk about. And that's why you see very little help in those areas, because it's so hard just even to fathom the idea that this could exist, that people just ignore it. And then the people that need the help never get it, right?
Well, and there are complex issues that affect our entire community. And we do need people to talk about it. And the only way we're going to really move the needle on stopping these interpersonal crimes is if we do talk about it and we make sure that if somebody's experiencing one of these types of violence, that they know that there's help out there and that there's compassion and empathy for them out in the community.
Amen. Amen to that. Beth, how long have you been doing this for?
I started with Weave in 1995, so a long time. Coming up on 19 years. I've been the CEO since 2006, though. So
you grew in the organization until you took over.
Yeah, I started as the director of development and community relations. So, raising money and awareness. I left the organization for 4 years, but I stayed on the board of directors and then came back. So I've been connected in one way or another for a really long time.
Well, that's what I call a calling. And when you have a calling, so I'm a man of faith, so I follow Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, and I didn't know that I had a calling until I finally got into that calling, and now my life is fulfilled. So why would you change something that you were made for, right? So in your case, what got you in that? So let's go back in time. When I hear from stories like yours, for me it's very easy to interview CEOs for companies that make a lot of money. It's very easy because I was one of those persons. I'm still am. It's super hard too. But at the end of the day, it's to make money. So you are actually immediately getting the results. You're immediately getting the benefits of your efforts. But with somebody like you, you have to have a different mindset since the beginning. Tell me about the end of your high school. What was in your mind, and what did you want to do when you were a kid?
I grew up in a family that ran a professional theater company. My dad was a professor of theater, and both my parents are writers. My mom wrote Harlequin romance novels, and I was kind of the odd person out in the family in that I had a finance brain. So I got my bachelor's degree in finance and thought I was going to, go into the corporate world and do that. But I was really struck by my business ethics classes that I took. and really looking philosophically at, what do businesses do and how do businesses use people. And I had a pretty early gut instinct that it wasn't going to be my calling to be in the for-profit world. So I went back to graduate school in theater and I thought I was going to raise money for the arts. I felt like it was a good blend of my skills, my passion for the nonprofit world and the arts, and having a finance brain. And that's really what fundraising is. And I got my jollies by raising lots of money. And so, and helping people who had earned a lot of money in their careers put it to good use. I mean, that's really, really where I found my passion. And so I started in public radio and did that for a little bit. And then there was an opening at Weave, and I felt very strongly that, I want people to be safe in their bodies and in their homes and on their streets. We help people of all genders, but certainly women and their children. I wanted to make sure that they could pull themselves up and out of the situations they were in with the help of an agency like mine. And I really like the challenge of being able to talk about really uncomfortable subjects with people that, as you were saying, people don't necessarily want to talk about it. And the only way we're going to be successful is if we include men and people from all communities and all belief systems in recognizing that, nobody deserves to be sexually assaulted or to experience domestic violence.
For sure. And it's more common than you think. But most people don't even have, they are put into so much shame that they don't even look for help. That's what bothers me so much, And that's why I was so excited to do this podcast, because I know some people will be listening that they may be in this situation, and now we're going to guide them how to get help. Because you are trapped, especially if you're a stay-at-home mom, or if you're a person that is overthrown by an abusive person. That same abuse keeps you from asking for help. So it becomes like a life sentence. It must be horrible to be in that situation, right?
Well, and I think people get really confused. They get really caught up in the idea of physical violence. And I can tell you that more people are experiencing other types of abuse than being physically injured. And the challenge is that people don't think what they're going through counts. And people looking in from the outside don't recognize that financial abuse is one of the primary types of abuse we see, where either somebody's not allowed to work or is forced to work and give all their money to the abusive partner, or they're coerced into getting into debt, or they have their identity stolen by their partner. We also see a lot of technological abuse, people tracking people with their various devices, and spiritual abuse, where you're not allowed to practice, whether it's religion or whatever fills you up. So when somebody's experiencing those kinds of abusive behaviors, they don't necessarily think that counts as domestic violence. And so they don't tell anybody, and they just live with it. And oftentimes it's intergenerational. That's how they grew up. That's how their father treated their mother. And so, really helping people see that you don't have to live that way. And if you know somebody who's telling you stories that just don't sound right, that you could be that lifeline for them to help them get help.
Those are called multi-generational curses. And you're completely right. Psychological abuse sometimes is 10 times worse than physical abuse. Because
Absolutely.
How can you prove that you're being psychologically attacked?
Well, and it really leaves deep scars in people, and strips them of their just their confidence and feeling good about themselves. And that's harder to overcome than a broken arm, for instance. So my mission, my personal mission, is to make sure people really understand all the nuances of domestic violence and know it when they see it, and know how to get somebody to help. That's really what it is. And the entrepreneurial piece of this is that different communities talk about it in different ways. Different religions talk about it in different ways. We live in a very diverse community in Sacramento. So we have a lot of immigrants, refugees here, and many of them are coming from places where that behavior is condoned. In some countries, it's not illegal to abuse your partner. So, we're constantly having to find new ways to talk to people about what they might be experiencing and making sure that they know that they have help.
The way that I defined it is, well, I want to talk a little bit about those multi-generational courses, right? Because what you just mentioned is so right. You're born into a situation, your parents behave a certain way, and then you inherit that, and then you allow yourself to get treated that way just because you saw your parents doing that.
Right.
And the one thing that I want people to understand that we were born in this world with free will. Regardless of where you were born, you have the God-given right of having free will, which means you have the right to choose whatever you want. And when somebody else is attacking your free will, that's when the abuse starts. For me, I feel every day I wake up and say, thank you, Lord, because I live in the free world where I can actually choose whatever I want, as long as my choice doesn't affect the freedom of my next person, of somebody else. So my freedom stops where the freedom of somebody else starts. That's how these countries have been built on. That's why we're so prosperous. But we start to forget that. And then you see all these riots on the streets, and you see, it goes above and beyond the nuclear family. But everything starts in the nuclear family. If you stop the source, which is abuse and violence and assault in the nuclear family, you will not see all these manifestations of horrible ways of living life that we're experiencing right now.
Well, and it's interesting that you talk about free will, because at its root, domestic violence is about power and control. It's about one person wanting to control another person or group of people. And when you look at it through that lens, physical violence certainly is one way to control somebody, but it's that mental brainwashing and messing with somebody's mind that often is the most powerful control. And it's people losing sight of the fact that they do have free will and that they do have the right to be a whole person.
Beth, a few minutes ago you mentioned that your job is to inspire people to invest their money where it's needed the most. And that's a beautiful story. And I want to emphasize that because, again, we live in the free world where if you want to become an entrepreneur, you actually have the choice. And if you are good enough, if you learn and if you apply yourself, you will actually be successful. And then once you get this level of success, you will realize that it's not going to fulfill your heart. When I started getting my heart fulfilled is when I realized that what I was giving and the overflow was to bless other people in different ways. Mm-hmm. And that's your job, is to open people's eyes and realize that their overflow of blessings can be actually utilized to set the captives free. Isn't that beautiful?
Philanthropy is a beautiful thing. It's the act of giving. And we always have people new in their profession working at Weave, because we're a large organization and we're often, people's first job, especially in our fundraising department. And, people often come in and it's like they think we're tricking them into giving us their money. And I'm like, nobody's making anybody give money to us. We're sharing the work that we do. We're sharing the impact that we're hoping to have on the world and on our community. And we're inviting people to contribute if it resonates with them. And, this is in December is a very giving time of year. So it's very gratifying to work at a nonprofit when people are opening their pocketbooks and opening their hearts. But all year long, we meet people that either they were touched by domestic violence or sexual assault themselves, or they know someone, or they just have that belief that nobody should have to suffer and nobody should have to experience that.
When I hear what you just said, I think that is the opposite. You're giving people the privilege to give because when the person that gives is the one that receives the most. And if you guys don't believe me, whoever is listening and never gave, go give somebody something to somebody that cannot pay you back. Like go to a homeless person and give them $20 and see how you feel after that. That sense of gratitude that comes into your own heart, the giver, it's 10 times better than what the person receives. So at the end of the day, the giver actually gets the most benefit.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm always sad when we receive a bequest. A lot of people put nonprofit organizations in their will or their trust, and then when they pass away, we get the gift. And I'm always sad when we didn't know the person. They weren't a known donor to us, and we couldn't thank them when they were alive. Obviously grateful for the gift, but I'm grateful when people let us know. By the way, you're in my will, and when I die, hopefully years from now, you'll receive money. And usually they're significant gifts because, people have assets, houses, that kind of a thing. So they're very meaningful gifts for a nonprofit. And that's just another way that people can support a nonprofit organization. If you don't have money to give now, maybe you have some assets or an estate that down the road, take care of your family, of course, but $30,000, $100,000 is a very meaningful gift to a nonprofit organization.
For sure. And how beautiful it is that people know in their heart that this life is short, and before you know it, you're at the end of your life. I keep always joking with my wife that I feel like I'm 25 years old inside, but then I see myself in the mirror. I'm like, who's that old dude?
Like, what happened?
Right? But to your point, yes, I believe that, God has put eternity in your heart. You know that you are forever. Somehow That's why you feel young inside, and then you have to look at the mirror to realize what's the reality. But to actually dedicate the wealth that you have been able to accumulate throughout your years to a cause that will actually set a lot of people free, that's the most beautiful kind thing that you can ever do.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Right? And another thing that you touched, Beth, is that your job was actually to collect the money, but that's only the one part. The other part is just as important, is how do they actually make that money impactful for the people? And that's where your finance brains comes in too, right? Because you have to run an efficiency house so that you can bless as many people as possible, right?
Absolutely. And, a lot of nonprofit organizations get grouchy when they're asked to, produce what outcomes. It's like, how do you know at the end of the day that you did something good for this world? And we're very data driven at Weave. We're always looking at who's seeking help. How does that compare to the demographics of our community? Who's not seeking help? Because if we're not seeing people ask for help, we know that there's need out there. What is it that we're doing wrong, or that we're not doing in a culturally responsive way so that people feel comfortable coming and asking for help? Or if we're getting lots of requests for the same thing that we don't do, and we can't, we scan the community and nobody's providing that service, then maybe we need to step up and add that to our bag of tricks for people. So, it's really, we're not selling widgets, and we're not making an income, but we're always looking at, where are we putting our precious dollars? How can we help the most number of people with the least amount of money? And how can we do it in a way that's sustainable? So, we get government grants, we, raise money, and it's a real woven blend of different financial sources so that we're not dependent on one thing or the other, and we can be sustainable into the future, because unfortunately I don't see us ending domestic violence and sexual assault anytime soon.
Yeah, but we can do whatever we can to try to eliminate it. How does your process work? Like, how do you impact people? Like, if somebody is suffering from some kind of abuse, what they should do now that this is coming to their awareness? Because I bet a lot of people don't even know you guys exist.
Most people find us online. We track our online activity on our website, so we know what people are typing into Google to find us, and we know what they're doing when they get to our website. Most people start by just kind of questioning what's going on. Does this count as domestic violence? Why does he hit me? Why does he yell at my children? They'll type in questions like that. The majority of people start with our 24/7 support and information line. So they're calling and asking questions, wondering what help we can give them. Kind of our core services are shelter. We operate a large emergency and transitional shelter operation. So some people really need to flee and hide in a confidential shelter. But the vast majority can extract themselves through legal means, getting a restraining order, having their abusive partner kicked out, that kind of a thing. So we have attorneys that help with that. And some people are just in that contemplative, I don't know what to do space where they want counseling. So they come and we provide therapeutic counseling for them and psychoeducation. So teaching them about what they might be experiencing and helping them figure out what their next steps are, because it's dangerous. Domestic violence is a dangerous experience for people, and women are most likely to get killed by their partner, and they're most likely to get killed when they're leaving. So when they've told their partner that they're going to leave, because again, it goes back to that control. When an abuser finds that they are losing control of the situation is when they're most likely to get even more dangerous if they have that capacity. So we try to offer just a whole array of things that might provide these supports, and we're out in the community in multiple locations so that so people can find us.
Beth, one of the things that I think is very important is that counseling part, because I don't know if you get this, but I bet there is repeat customers where they come out of a relationship that is abusive just to end up in another one that is just as abusive or worse. Have that happened to you?
All the time. We find that, it's a learned behavior to be an abuser. People aren't just born abusive. And many of the survivors that we meet, again, it's been normalized in their family, or maybe they move away from a physically abusive partner, but they end up with somebody who's emotionally abusive, because it all comes back to, what does love look like to you, and how do you believe you should be treated? And so that's why we're constantly going younger and younger and younger, talking to 10-year-olds, 8-year-olds, what does a healthy relationship look like, so that hopefully those kids grow up to not be abusers and not be somebody who falls into an unhealthy relationship.
True. And usually the abuser, if you look at the past, the pattern is that they were abused when they were little, or they were extremely hurt when they were little. So they grow to be this angry person that, wants to control and abuse just the way they actually were hurt.
I mean,
so you have to break that chain, right?
Yep. And it's very true to say that hurt people hurt people. And, people don't become a aggressive, physically abusive person from nowhere. I mean, they were experiencing that as a kid. They have seen it modeled for them. And that it is absolutely learned behavior, and it can be unlearned if the will is there for somebody to make changes in their own life.
One of the things that I've found personally is that the power of forgiveness is what heals people's wound faster, like their own spiritual wounds, if you will. When they finally forgive or ask for forgiveness and they finally let go, that's one of the biggest weapons I get, to break those chains, because it becomes like an addiction of abuse, right?
Absolutely. And, unfortunately, there aren't enough supports available for the people who do the harm. And we don't serve abusers, but there are nonprofits that do. But unfortunately, most of them are, being mandated by court, by a judge, to go through those classes. And, if the will isn't there to find that forgiveness and to make those changes, you're just making somebody sit through something that makes them more angry, frankly. So I think we could, as a society, do a better job of healing the people who are doing the harm, rather than just locking them up or, to what end?
Because it's about breaking this multi-generational chain. You break the chain, then you stop the problem, right?
Absolutely. And, we're in a lot of the schools, elementary schools, junior highs, high schools, um, with that message and really talking about, what do sexual and domestic violence look like and what can you do, especially as a male who tend to be the perpetrators, what can you do to not end up being a perpetrator? And a lot of it goes back to just respect for other people, respect of other people's free will. Male respecting women. And, it is a very gendered crime, domestic violence and sexual assault, although it can happen to anybody.
It's incredible. It reminds me, I just made an interview with this person from the States, born again American, very successful. And then he decided with his wife to move to El Salvador, Central America, and start a non-for-profit on mental health. And there were 3 people. Now they have 700 people and 10 countries. And he says, if you go after the mental health problems, you eradicate a lot of the symptoms, because everything is here, right? Like your behavior starts with your thoughts. If you don't have your thoughts aligned properly, then you start doing all these horrible things. And the impact that this not-for-profit is doing in South America, it's great, because that's why they grew so fast, right? Because they are actually finally giving the help that the people really need. People look at, food, and people look at shelter. But if you really want to have a better society, you got to start with mental health too, right?
Well, unfortunately, there are a lot of cultures where getting counseling isn't okay. And so that's the other challenge, is finding ways to provide that mental health assistance to people who might initially be kind of averse to it, or culturally it's like, we don't need people, we don't talk about our business with other people, kind of a mentality, can be a hard one to break. So that's awesome that he's doing that, because that is a culture, the Latino culture often does not want to be talking about their private business with other people.
I come from Guatemala, and I remember that people saying, people that go to the psychologist, they are crazy people, or they are too weak.
Yeah.
That was the slogan back in the 80s,
Yeah, it
Only
takes a
the
lot.
weak goes to the psychologist, right?
Yeah, and it can take a lot to break that, especially if you've got, parents and elders in a community really poo-pooing it and saying that's not okay. Then, it can be hard as a younger person to seek that kind of help.
For sure. Beth, in your career, what has been some of the biggest challenges that you have faced, and how do you overcome them?
I think funding is always a huge challenge. During the recession, a lot of our funding got cut, and we already, when we have a lot of money, can't serve everybody, and that was a really difficult time. And we're always on edge. It's like, oh, not another recession. But finding the right staff to provide services is an ongoing challenge. It takes somebody with a lot of compassion, but also who has a lot of boundaries and doesn't get enmeshed with their clients. So finding people with the right constitution. A lot of people who've experienced domestic violence want to help others, but often their healing isn't far enough along, and it's not going to be a healthy situation for them. And then just constantly having to pivot to make sure we're providing what people need in the moment, and addressing new types of abuse. Who would have thought technological abuse would be a thing until we all had cell phones and we can track people with little things that we stick in their purse, So, constantly having to pivot and find new ways to serve people and to address new types of abuse is an ongoing challenge.
Wow, it's incredible. And what keeps you going every morning to the office and have that smile in your face?
I love my staff. I love, helping people grow in their careers. We have a lot of people who are working on their master's degrees in counseling and getting their hours so that they can go be a professional psychologist or a marriage family therapist or social worker. So I love these new people coming in and wanting to dedicate themselves to this work and working with all of them. Every day we help somebody, and so that's very gratifying. And like right now during the holidays, we have our holiday toy shop, so we're making sure families in the community have a joyful holiday season, and things like that are things to look forward to every year and things that keep me going.
That's fantastic. How long did it take you for you? Like, how did you go through the ladder? Because Wave is a large organization, right? How do you actually made it to CEO? And this is important for me because a lot of people that listen to this podcast, that's what maybe they're stuck in one level in their life and they want to break free. That's why it's called the Break Free Podcast. How do you manage? How do you manage to get all the way to the top?
I think one thing that was important for me was to leave and come back and to go try some other things. When I left, I specifically went to a job where I managed more people and a more complex department than I had been managing at Weave. And I needed to go do that. I needed to go try something else and bring those skills back to Weave in the capacity as CEO. And we have a lot of staff, frankly, that have left and come back. And I mean, it's kind of gotten to be a joke around here, but it's like, yeah, go off, try something else, get those skills, and then bring them back and use them here.
That's fabulous, right? They're just getting trained somewhere else.
Exactly.
It's so funny because that's actually when I was in corporate, that's what I did. I was 10 years in corporate, and when I felt like I reached a ceiling that I couldn't break through, I will actually get another job, and I got me above and above and above. And that's how actually I grew up in my corporate ladder, through different positions at different places, and then people will value the experience, right?
Well, and you know what you like and what you don't like. I even for a year, I consulted and had no staff, and I found I didn't like it. I didn't like not being rooted in my community, and I didn't like, I really value mentoring people and, being that kind of coach for them in their careers while being in a position of leadership is something that's gratifying to me, which I wouldn't have known if I hadn't tried it.
What a great point. One of the things that get people stuck is the fear of not finding anything else when they leave. And there is nothing worse than letting yourself be managed by fear. Well, that's what you do, right? That's what you do. You get people free from the fear of their partner, right? But that happens in your corporate life too. If you are too afraid to take the next step of faith just because you think you could never get another job, then you get stuck in a position and you never grow. And it's not good for anybody, not for your employer, not for yourself, to take that step of faith and say, okay, I'm going to try something else, knowing that I will be provided for. It's beautiful. And that's when you actually really find freedom, because what you said is true. How many people are stuck in a job that they don't like just because they are too afraid to find something else that they may like? Maybe they want, but now they tried it. How can you figure out if something is good for you if you don't try it?
Well, and I feel very strongly that managers need to be having those conversations with their staff. What is your vision for yourself? Is it here or is it somewhere else? And we can have a grown-up conversation about the fact that maybe you've hit your limit here in this job, and I'll support you in going out and finding something else. That I feel is true leadership. Not just keeping people stuck in the position that is comfortable for them and frankly comfortable for me. It's like, it's great to have somebody who's been here for 8 years and knows what they're doing, but at some point, setting them free and helping them grow is probably the kinder and better thing as a leader.
That's fantastic. Beth, I thank you so much for your time. You must be so busy. Almost 40 minutes have gone by, and I want to be respectful of your time. I'm going to ask you one last question. If you had access, let's say you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write on that billboard? What would be your highest inspiration to the world?
Well, our tagline is when everyone acts, violence ends. And I feel really strongly about that it's everybody's job to end violence in our communities and in people's lives. And, I'm always challenging people. What's one thing you could do? What's one thing that you could do to make a difference and help to end domestic and sexual violence? And it's up to everybody to do something. So that would be my billboard.
That's beautiful. Have you ever encountered somebody that they are so desperate that they are actually even considering taking their own life?
I mean, suicidal folks are an ongoing challenge, especially on our support information line. We do specific suicide training for them because they do encounter that quite a bit. It's also a tactic abusive partners use, is threatening to kill themselves to, garner some compassion, I guess. And very often they do kill themselves and they kill their partners. So it's a very real threat for victims and for the perpetrators.
That's incredible. Thank you so much, Beth, for the work that you do. I applaud you. I encourage you to keep going and keep growing strong. For the people that are listening to this, I want to help with your cause and give you the necessary funds to keep growing I will call it your ministry, because what you're doing is a ministry. You're helping people out unconditionally. How can they find you? How can they actually give to you, to your organization?
If we're at weaveinc.org. If you Google Weave Sacramento, we pop up. And, wherever people are living, there's some organization like Weave in your community. And I encourage you to find out who it is in your community and support them. There's a domestic violence national hotline that you can call, and they can connect you, whether you're somebody in need of support or somebody who wants to support the organization, and they can connect you with whoever it is in your community that you can reach out to.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Beth. It's incredible. I have a separate channel where I talk about my faith. And today, I woke up with this thing in my heart about people that are about to commit suicide. And it's no coincidence that we're talking about this in your channel. And most of the people that are in this situation is because of their domestic violence issues, that they just don't know. They find it as a dead end and they don't know how to get out of it. So the only way out for them is just going towards taking your life, which is the worst mistake you can ever make.
Absolutely.
So I thank you for that. I thank you for all the people that you have trained that are actually, giving their life to help other people. Thank you so much. God bless and have a beautiful Christmas.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
That's all for today's episode of the Break Free podcast. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Starting your own business can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Visit davidmansilla.com to pick up a copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. Expand what you consider to be possible and reach your full potential. And join us on the next episode.